Welcome into the OBR streaming network. This is a brand new edition of The React. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is the always fantastic Pete Smith. You can follow him on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, @_Pete Smith_. We've got much to discuss tonight. The Browns are in the national news. Much to discuss. What's going on, Pete?
Busy week. It's been an interesting week for me because a whole bunch of people have told me I'm wrong about something they didn't actually read. So this will be fun as an opportunity to sort of discuss the issue and present what we have described as the common sense case of why the owner is not meddling in the Deshaun Watson decision. But
Yes,
that should be entertaining.
There are angles to this, right? You have written about this. I believe you to be correct in your description, but what it means, though, Pete, and we're gonna watch some videos first and stuff on this because it's been the hot topic everywhere. I mean, everybody. I found videos for days calling for Deshaun Watson to be benched. Like,
sure.
Nationally, ESPN, doesn't matter. I mean, we could have watched videos all night long of guys telling Watson how terrible he is and that he should be benched. And all of them mostly alluding to the fact that ownership is the one doing it. So we're going to dig into that. We're going to dig into some local stuff on Stefanski. And we're also, and a bunch of other stuff. I mean, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show has a bunch of topics for us, which, we love. PFT, Florio, Sims, some interesting angles there on the same topic. Lots to talk about. Before we get into that, I was looking at the injury report, Pete.
Everyone.
Cooper, huh?
Everyone.
Cooper DNP, Delpit DNP, concussion, Foreman DNP, Garrett DNP, Hickman DNP, Hudson DNP, Njoku knee ankle DNP. Does that mean he got more hurt?
He hurt his knee or whatever. He suffered an additional injury after he came back. Yes.
Ethan Pocic, DNP, who literally in rewatching the game, there was a play, Pete, where it looked like he got physically lifted off the ground and thrown into the quarterback in the Washington game.
Yep.
Intriguing. DNP for Denzel Ward. So, there it is. If you go to the Eagles side, there are 0 DNPs.
Story of the Browns season so far. I mean, for all the things that are bad, quarterback, offensive line, and some of these other things that are all not going well. I mean, it's impossible to get away from this. Browns are one of the teams that have been wiped out by injuries. The Rams are in that boat, also 1-4. There's a couple other teams who have just been absolutely destroyed by injuries, and it's part of the game. Nobody's gonna feel sad for the Browns, but for the people who want to fire everybody, this seems relevant to me that you have nobody on your team on the field and you're sitting there going, why aren't we winning? Well, that's a big piece of it.
There seems to be. Did you feel that when Stefanski was asked about play calling and giving it to Dorsey, that he was not as firm on it as he has been in the past?
I think he was just trying to get through the question. I mean, it's such a stupid question because look, if Kevin Stefanski hands over play calling to Ken Dorsey because he's going to go block somebody, great. Other than that, I don't care. They are talking every play. Now, having said that, given what we talked about in the postgame show with the third quarter, they've got to get that cleaned up to go faster. But clearly they are talking. That is part of the problem. Is it's not efficient in getting the calls in. That part does need to be cleared up and be quicker. But this is one of those things we deal with this every year with the whole play calling thing. The offensive coordinator is heavily involved. There are a number of people involved in this process. It's not just Stefanski. But if they feel it's more efficient to go with Ken Dorsey, great. But you know what's going to happen? Kevin Stefanski's going to be in the headset talking to him. Like there's this notion that if Kevin Stefanski's not calling plays, he's going to be like doing something else. No, he's going to be right there in the headset listening to the play call. Like this is one of those things that is really silly. And we do this constantly as if he's going to go manage the team. Like, come on. Mike Tomlin is listening to the defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator call plays. Mike Tomlin will occasionally tell the offense, or has, I don't know about Arthur Smith, in the past, told the offensive coordinator, you need to call this because he's the head coach. Of course he's going to be involved in this. These are the important decisions.
Correct. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Now, and I don't want him to give up play calling. I do think it's interesting. I don't, but I think, well, I'll just save this for later. I'm going to save it for later, Pete. We're just going to dive in and we'll get to all of this tonight. Because there's things to discuss about this offense and everything else. So, but let's start with on Stefanski 92.3, good friend of mine, Ken Carmen and Anthony Lyman 92.3 this morning. It's not. I don't know if this was this morning or when this was. Maybe yesterday morning. Grading Stefanski so far. Here we go. See if we can do this. All right, here we go.
He's been an F this year. He's been an F. I mean, if you were to grade Kevin Stefanski, you would give him an F.
You think that he could be doing more with Deshaun Watson?
I don't know if it's that. I just think it's altogether having a team believe. I'm talking about not just X's and O's.
If you think one guy could be doing more with Deshaun Watson, well, the other guy has $172 million in dead cap space if you let him go. So guess which one might need replacing then? So if you're giving him an F, why are you giving him an F? If you're giving him an F, I assume you think
it's looked. I think it is fair. I think it's fairly obvious that this has looked like a very poor coach football team. So coach gets an F. I don't.
What happened on fourth down? Yeah, I agree with you there.
No, I'm not just saying there. I'm just saying they can't line up. Defense is now not lining up. The defense has been picked apart. Not all their fault. The offense has not put them in great positions. But I need the defense to put the offense in better positions. They haven't done that. I just think if I were grading a lot of components of this team, it's a lot of F's.
So that's interesting.
Now.
So because a lot of us are picking sides, like, Stefanski ain't that bad, Watson's garbage. Or there have been plenty of people going, get this guy who is mild-mannered with the hat out of here. I don't care how many awards he's won. He's ruining the quarterback. You're putting culpability on both.
That's the thing. I don't think Stefanski's ruined Watson at all. I just don't think he's coached well. I don't think it's I think it's hard when your quarterback stinks, and your quarterback has stunk for almost the entire season. But I also just look at the things that are happening, like the nonsense list, things like that. I don't know.
Stefanski, we're going to do that again soon. You got anything else to add to that?
Maybe.
Okay.
Stefanski just for this team right now. I mean, they might need that fiery guy. That's not really him. That's not his DNA. He normally has his leaders on the team do that stuff. But when your quarterback is not a leader, and he quite fairly, it's right now fairly obvious that the guy, you have other teams. We'll play that audio. We have other teams and their players questioning how much confidence he has.
Sure as hell will.
A quarterback that doesn't have confidence just simply can't lead. Like, no one's going to buy that stuff. More people buy into the backup quarterback and his leadership skills right now.
But they made him a captain and gave him a game ball.
That's right.
It's true. I think he is more of a leader. I do. Vocally, at least. I would say, and I know you hate the whole body language thing, Pete, but Watson looks like, I don't know. He looks aloof. He looks like he doesn't care. He was smiling in the fourth quarter, joking around with the other team. It's all a bad look. Walking out of the huddle with 20 seconds left. I know people made too big a deal out of that, but I mean, you could at least try to get somebody off the field. You know what I mean? Instead of just walking off the field, like, it's just a bad look. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong.
I don't think his body language is problematic in that he's like not serious. I think he's trying as hard as he can. It's just bad. And he's not having success. I think if he had good body language, we'd all be mad at him, as often happens. I mean, the ultimate example of that is Greg Newsome. Greg Newsome has fantastic body language most of the time, and people hate him for it. So,
it's dancing. That's different.
well, I mean, even just being confident, just trying to like keep himself going. And at that position, I think you have to do that. I never hold it against him for doing that and having Jim Schwartz say that they tell them to do these things.
Yeah.
So I don't care about that. I mean, from the standpoint of Deshaun Watson looks like a losing quarterback, which he is what he is. I mean, that's it. As far as the grading thing goes, I mean, Kevin Stefanski gets an F because they're 1-4. Like, what are you going to do? Give him an A? Like,
I wouldn't.
As I've talked about, you own the record. You own the product, and I say this as saying their injuries are ridiculous. They are absolutely ridiculous, and the lack of blocking up front, the fact that they don't block or tackle, they don't catch the ball when it's thrown to them, the quarterback's inaccurate. All these things may be happening, but I can't sit here and go, well, he's doing a good job. Now, I also don't think that any of this means, that they need to fire him or anything else. But I think it's fair to say the Browns are failing this year. I mean, that's just what it is. I think Kevin Stefanski is an excellent coach. It's just not happening this year. And this is what I'm reminded of is last year is like when the injuries started piling up and like Nick Chubb went down and some of this stuff. This was the record most people predicted what they were going to have. People were talking about being, 1-5 and 2-6 and this type of stuff. And then the Browns just sort of figured it out. And, it's sort of miraculous in the way they were able to do it. They're not being able to do the same thing. So I see I think he's a great coach. I think this is a ridiculous situation, but I can't say great job Kevin Stefanski this year based on what they put up. I mean, come on. I respect the way he handles his business in terms of I don't want him to go up there and like fake it. I want him, I've always approved of the way he sort of had the next week mentality. I thought that was super valuable last year. But
yes,
losing press conferences are never fun. So I mean, like, this is one of those things where people are like, get on him and go, well, his press conference sucks. Tell me about the good press conferences you remember from losing coaches, because even if they come out fired up and ready to throw stuff and stuff, that gets very tired very quickly. So I don't care about that stuff. What I want is to see it get figured out. And hopefully over the course of the year, they will get healthier and start putting things together. But I can't say good job, Kevin Stefanski, based on what I've seen, even though I think he's a very good coach.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a great coach. I think to steal somebody's word in the chat, his stoicism is ideal for a head coach in the NFL, an even-keeled person that takes it, go 1-0 each week. So, his grade is incomplete so far. Yeah, it's not going to be good for sure. My issue with Kevin, I guess, I'm going to save that for later because it's more about the offense and things like that, right? And some other decisions. But here's something I wanted to bring up because they talked about the defense and the missing tackles and stuff like that. But a number that I retweeted, but I just wanted to bring this up on this topic and hear what you thought. So, league average disguised coverages, right, is up from 27% to 31% from 2023 to 2024. So teams that are disguising coverages are doing it more often around the league. The Browns are third last in most disguised coverages at 19.2%. So they're doing it almost the least amount in the league. The only team who's doing it less than them disguising coverage is Dallas and Indy,
who are both bad.
Both bad. The Jets are fourth. They just fired their head coach, who's a defensive coordinator. And fifth is the Bengals,
who are bad,
who are also an all-time bad defense. So, why? I mean, I know the stubbornness with Schwartz, but like That's super irritating. That stat drives me insane. You have the ability to disguise things and shake things up, and you're only disguising coverages 19.2% of the time. The league average is at 31. Why is he not doing more?
The simple reason is because the Browns aren't executing enough when they do it. We keep seeing miscommunication issues. We keep seeing big plays come on, things where we're sitting there, guys are either didn't get a check or aren't where they're supposed to be, and all this stuff. Like, this is the stuff that people criticized the Browns for in 2021. This is the stuff that people criticized the Browns in 2022 when they had Joe Woods as the defensive coordinator. And they're the same issues that they're having with Jim Schwartz, because they didn't disguise much last year either. The Browns, for whatever reason, and this is on the players ultimately, are not very good at this. And maybe some of that's coaching as well. I mean, ultimately, you have to own the product, but like, they need to do a better job of being able to do those things. Like, credit Brian Flores. He's done a fantastic job with the Vikings this year. They are almost always some sort of disguise coverage, and they're able to pull it off and execute. If I'm a coach and we practice this stuff and they don't do it in practice, I'm not going to do it on Sundays. Or if I'm watching it if I try to do it on Sundays and we're giving up touchdowns to the Dallas Cowboys, like we saw where everybody's pointing at Juan Thornhill as Martin Emerson's cover, he didn't get the check and was wrong, then you can't do those things. Now, some of that is also the way they play man coverage is tricky to disguise. And you and I have both talked about how, like, they probably do that too much. But here again, they don't play zone all that well. So this is where the Browns need to get better. Some of this needs to get healthy. I mean, if you're down Grant Delpit and Denzel Ward, you're going to be probably doing less, not more. If you can get Juan Thornhill back shortly, I think that would help you in some of these aspects. But they've just got to do it better. And that's ultimately where I think this thing it sits right now.
In a point two on this, and I agree with you, it is on the players to a certain point, but also on Schwartz too, some, I think, schematically. But, in a league that was all-time low scoring for the first 3-4 weeks, and Mel Kiper ridiculously joked about outlawing cover 2, right? Because it was shutting down offenses so much. The Browns run single high safety coverage over 70% of the time, which is by far the most in the NFL.
Well, part of that is that the whole cover 2 thing was wrong. Yes, some of that was cover 2, but a lot of it was also cover 3. So if you're a single high, you can easily get to cover 3. Right. Now, I don't know the percentages on that, but I know the Browns run a good amount of cover 3. But yes, that was what was happening is cover 2, cover 3, getting back, keeping everything in front of you was sort of limiting offenses. So yes, that is definitely a thing. But I've talked about this on multiple pre-games and post-games where I'm sitting there watching them run a high-risk inverted cover 2 in a high-stress situation, and it almost getting beat when they could easily drop into 2-man or true Florida, or at least cover 3. Do something along those lines where you can get guys back and play forward so you can try to reduce the damage and trust your pass rush and all those things.
Yeah, it's just it just kind of reeks of the same. Like, he said that he was going to change stuff, and I just don't see a whole lot of it. And ultimately, you may be right that that's probably on the players that kind of handcuffing what he can do because of poor play, right? So I understand that. All right, let's move on here. You're watching the React. Hit like, hit subscribe. If you're on X, we appreciate it. Lots of you here tonight in the chat participating. We appreciate it. Hop on over to youtube.com/Orange and Brown Report. Hit like and subscribe. My name is Brad Ward. That's Pete Smith. All right, so we're going to get into some of this stuff here, Pete, that you wrote about here as we dive into pro football talk. This has kind of been the topic of everything here the past day or two. And I think that Florio and Sims do a good job talking about it, although ultimately they may be incorrect here a little bit. So, but here we go. Pete is elite. Yes, MC.
Back to your original point. We're watching one guy go like this and go to superstardom, and we're watching another guy who once was up there in superstardom, and now he should be on the bench. I mean, period. I don't even know what to say. Their offense stinks. He doesn't see the field that well. He doesn't throw the ball that well. He doesn't look as fast. He makes no plays off schedule. He watches the rush a lot. He misses throws like this. He turns the ball over. He doesn't do any of the things that we just talked about and you just gave Jaden Daniels praise for his football team. He does none of that for Cleveland. And the ownership and the front office are going to double down because they made a mistake. So they're going to go, we want to make sure we screw everybody in Cleveland over because we made the mistake. And that's what it looks like right now in Cleveland.
And look, here's the key. The Browns have a lot of issues right now.
Yeah.
Are those issues something that flows from the fact that the guys on the field have no faith overall because they're stuck with a quarterback who isn't who he used to be? And what do you do when a team has a lot of issues? How do you shake a team up? You change out the quarterback. If he did not have that contract that will pay him another $92 million fully guaranteed beyond this year, he would already be benched. This is one of the Sean Payton's sayings, and I'm sure he got it from Bill Parcells. This is true in any walk of life, in anything that you do, folks. Apply this to your own lives. When you've made a decision that is a mistake, the worst thing you can do is allow your pride, your ego, and your vanity to force you to double down on your mistake, to justify your mistake, because then you make it worse. And you're miserable along the way. That's what the Browns are facing now. Are they a functional football team that will say, you know what? I don't care that we owe him $92 million. We have to pay him. We don't have to play him. A fully guaranteed contract doesn't guarantee playing time. And yeah, it looks bad. And yeah, we're going to have a harder time putting a team out there because we're giving him so much money. But we can either put him out there and give him all that money or put somebody else out there who's going to be better and give him all that money. And that doesn't mean cut him because you still have to pay him. Jason Garrett's got it the right way. It's a two-way decision. It's not a one-way decision. You sit him down, you get a spark from somebody else, try to salvage this season. You still have Deshaun Watson, and maybe by next year he'll be better. Who knows? Who knows? And if it goes south, then so be it. But at a certain point, you got to make decisions. We hear this all the time. Best interest of the team. Is it in the best interest of the Cleveland Browns to have Deshaun Watson playing quarterback right now? No, it's in the best interest of those who would be said, man, what a dumb friggin' decision you made to give him $230 million fully guaranteed and give up all those draft picks.
Right.
Look how dumb you were. You're admitting it now. Good, you're admitting it. Well, you're making it worse by not admitting it because everybody already knows.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody knows.
Agreed. No, now it does. It looks stubborn. It looks, the politics of football look like they're getting involved, everything there. You feel bad.
And to the average fan, see, that's the
Right.
thing, folks. Hey, I'm talking to you, what's his name, Paul DePodesta, Chief Strategy Officer of the Cleveland Browns. I'm telling you something. There's a small nucleus of people who know and understand why you're doing what you're doing. To the average fan, they think you guys have lost your minds. The average fan doesn't understand that they're politically tied to Deshaun Watson.
Right.
They just think they're sticking with this guy who's not any good anymore.
Yeah, right. And yeah, I you said it right. Hey, it was an owner. It was a front office decision. They messed it up with Baker Mayfield. And
All right, let's stop. They keep saying it was an owner, a front office decision. You corrected me the other night, and in doing my due diligence and digging into this as much as I can, this was birthed from Stefanski and Barry, the concept of going to get Deshaun Watson. So
they are lockstep in everything they do. I mean,
Yes.
and that's the thing when you say the front office is pressuring this, like for somebody who's familiar with this team, that should immediately be like, this doesn't make any sense. Andrew Berry's not making Kevin Stefanski do anything. He's a reference point. But the other part about this, and this is always my favorite, the boogeyman has come back. Anytime something bad happens, that's the only time I ever hear Paul DePodesta's name. Because he's a fall guy for a certain person out there who immediately goes, oh, man, Paul DePodesta is really screwing this up. And one of the things I did is I reposted an article from the last time.
Yes.
People were accusing ownership of meddling in decisions. And this was the accusation that ownership had forced Kevin Stefanski to fire Alex Van Pelt and all these other assistant coaches. And in that article, I cited Charles Robinson of Yahoo. I don't know if I don't remember offhand if he explicitly said it, but he suggested really hard that Paul DePodesta was the person who decided to get rid of Josh Dobbs. And it was timed right after Josh Dobbs, I think, had one good game or whatever it was. And that he had gone in and he chief strategy officer this decision and forced it on everybody else. Well, lo and behold, it was the right decision. And no one's going to go back and say, Paul DePodesta, great job, because that's never what happened. But the other part about that, when I wrote that was, if that's the case, Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry should walk. If they're being forced to do these things, whether it's fire coaches or anything else, they should walk because they would be
play quarterbacks.
Right. So he would be a 2-time coach of the year who would then have had to succeed in what is clearly being described as a dumpster fire franchise. And in this scenario, if we're going to play into the conversation we're having now, this was before the contract extension was signed. It took until June or whatever to get that finally done. I am very sure that, one, that contract is guaranteed. And two, that Kevin Stefanski had certain assurances put into this that he was going to be able to do this. But ultimately, the owner could change his mind. So if the owner is now dictating to Deshaun Watson that he must play, and Kevin Stefanski saying, I want to put Jameis Winston in, he should go out there on Sunday and put Jameis Winston in. Because then what is the repercussion for that? What is the theory that's being thrown out there? If he goes against the owner's wishes,
that they would fire him, but ideally that would
So he gets fired. He gets fired. He gets fired, and he gets every dollar he was guaranteed in that the contract extension, which hasn't even started yet. He's still getting paid for the original contract, and we don't know the length or the monetary value of that contract, but we know he signed it. So he gets all that money. Andrew Berry is going to get fired with him because they are tied at the hip. I'd be very, very surprised if they were to divorce and get out of this. I'm going to throw out a number and say that's about $50 million that they are going to have to pay out. And you're going to sit there and say, well, that's nothing to Kevin Stefanski or to Jimmy Haslam. Okay. Well, he's already the $230 million he paid for Deshaun Watson has been gone for years. It was the second that contract was signed, the money was put into escrow. So he hasn't seen the $230 million in however many years. So all of this, to Florio's point, and one of the reasons I think you take this to logical conclusion and you go, of course they're not really going to do this, is you are literally saying, I've already said goodbye to this money. It's gone. Now, any money I spend after this is good money after bad. So now we've spent $50 million to get rid of the coach and the GM because they didn't play the guy. And they come out smelling better for it because even though they were involved in the decision to acquire him, they would have said, we want to bench Deshaun Watson, the guy everybody in Cleveland hates, the guy, or I should say everybody in the league hates, reviled in Cleveland, the unpopular quarterback. And they are going to come out of this and go, wait, we just wanted to bench the quarterback. We want to put Jameis Winston in or DTR, whoever it is. And they come out and go, oh, we get to be heroes now. We tried to bench the guy everybody hates. And Jimmy Haslam has to sit there and eat the fact that he is now in a position where he fired the most successful coach this team has had since it came back. The only coach with 2 11-win seasons other than Paul Brown. The only coach in this iteration that has a playoff win. and has to come out and say, I fired this guy because I'm going to stand up for Deshaun freaking Watson now. After all this, he can't play and he's going to do this now. It makes no sense on its face. Like, this is what it's preposterous. What does he think is going to what does anyone think is going to happen? It's going to magically fix itself. Jimmy Haslam's not however dumb you think Jimmy Haslam, and he's not that stupid. He can see it. He can see the game on the field. He can see it's bad, and he understands that the contract's being paid either way. So at this point, whenever they rip the Band-Aid off of benching him, he knows he's going to have to eat that embarrassment. It's going to be ugly. He's going to have to take it, and it's going to be sad. Whether it happens now, a year from now, or any other time, he's going to have to eat it. But if he has the capacity to put something that's less embarrassing on the field for him, it is in his now best interest to do this. So if it would be likely be the opposite of wanting to keep Deshaun Watson on the field. He'd more likely want to get anyone else on the field, even if it's just to say, look, I want to get this guy off the field because I want to do exactly what they advocated. Get him off the field. Maybe he can be repaired. Maybe he can come back and we can rehab some of that investment that I've already lost. But even that is stupid. Now, remember the $50 million we already lost that we've just paid out because we fired these guys, and now Jimmy Haslam is in the position of defending Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson's still on the roster. You now have to hire a new head coach and new GM. Let's throw out $30 million you have to spend for those guys. And they're going to say what to you, Jimmy Haslam? They're going to say, I'm not taking this job if I have to play Deshaun Watson. So you've literally done nothing to help yourself. You literally have the same problem you had with Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry in this situation. Kevin Stefanski says, I don't want to play Deshaun Watson. I want to play Jameis Winston. You fire him. The coach you want, whoever's left, maybe it's Hugh Jackson at this point, because no one's ever going to want this job the way you've made it this toxic. And now they're going to come to you and say, okay, I'm willing to take the job. The seventh guy on your list now says, I'm willing to take this job. He goes, but I want to pick my own quarterback. And he goes, is he going to say no at that point? He's stuck. He has no choice. So this idea that he is forcing this on him makes no sense. We're not done yet. We are not done yet with the stupidity of this idea. What is Jimmy Haslam's biggest focus right now over everything else that's going on this season?
The dome.
The dome. He wants people to pay him $1.2 billion of taxpayer money to build a dome. You think he's going to risk that by fighting for the 24 accused quarterback who everybody dislikes in this town and now is going to actively hate him for this? You think they're going to not get out and start writing local representatives and say to them, I'm not interested in paying taxpayer dollars. If you force this, you are not getting reelected. I'm not voting for you. I will vote for anyone else, because ultimately the bond and anyone else they're going to try to do is going to be put forward by people who are elected. They would like to stay elected. So even if it's not the $1.2 billion, that money is going to dry up very fast. So maybe it's now $900 million. Maybe it's $600 million. So he has now lost more money than Deshaun Watson's entire contract is worth on the thing he wants more than anything. He wants the dome. He's going to do anything he has to get the dome, even if it means sucking it up and eating all the punishment he gets. This is where the people who say, oh, you defend Jimmy Haslam, I've consistently said I want him to pay 100% of his dome. I want zero taxpayer dollars for his dome. But either way, if you're of the impression, well, he's going to get taxpayer funding for said dome, he has killed his own bargaining position by making himself a pariah in Northeast Ohio. And people are going to tell him $1.2 billion, stuff it. I have no interest in your dome. I'm certainly not going to pay the Browns have raised ticket prices about as much as anyone over the past however many years.
Yes.
You are going to get no help. You have killed your bargaining position. And then for people who want to go back and check, I said this. There are tweets I have out there. I said this the moment Deshaun Watson was the trade was complete, that Deshaun Watson was going to hurt bargaining for a new stadium. And here we are. Yeah. So $230 million is nothing if it means money's already spent, means nothing if he has to spend about $80 million replacing coach and GM, and then potentially hundreds of millions of dollars on the thing that is more important to him to anything else, And he's going to do this all to protect what most people believe is a serial sexual predator and the most unpopular person in Northeast Ohio and arguably anywhere else at this point in the grand scheme of pro sports. It makes no sense on his face. So please keep telling me I'm wrong about this, but this is insane to suggest that he's going to force this, because he can foresee all of this. He can foresee all of this coming, and he's still going to do it. Like, it makes no sense. So by all means, you can tell me I'm wrong, but listen, if you take all the case I'm laying out and say, oh, of course he's still going to do this. He's got however many billions of dollars. Well, here's the thing. Billionaires really like to keep their money, as illustrated by the fact they are trying to get taxpayers to pay for domes they can afford themselves. So if you want to believe that Jimmy Haslam's perfectly willing to set money on fire, all for Deshaun Watson, by all means. But there you have it.
Yeah. I 100%, when I read your article, I was like, it's correct. It's spot on. It makes no sense, right? It makes no sense for him to force his hand here. And everyone is assuming that because of his reputation, right? And also because of Stefanski's reputation. So if we take this at what, and I agree with you, that he's not forcing him to do this, and that this is Stefanski's decision to continue to play Watson. What the hell is he thinking then, Pete? What is he thinking?
Yeah, that's the tough part. And I didn't want to speculate in the article about that. I just wanted to stick to why it makes no sense for Jimmy Haslam to want to force his way into this conversation. There's a couple of theories I can throw out there. One, the idea of benching him is troubling, because what do you do with him at that point is like a weird thing that hangs out there. Like, I think ultimately what PFT is laying out here is probably the reasonable answer to that question. But I do think there's an element of, like, once you bench him, most people are going to be basically just get him out. Get him out. You know, he takes up a roster spot, but ultimately he just never shows up. That's not realistic as good as that sounds, because they can't move him. They can't do any of these things. And then the other one, as a part of that, is just, I think Kevin Stefanski might be resistant to the fact that, like, one, everything on offense is just so bad right now, that the offensive line is putrid, that the wide receivers aren't catching the ball when it hits them in the hands, that the penalties are ridiculous, that beyond just, I don't think Kevin Stefanski wants to be a blamer in that scenario. I think you can make the case that it works against the messaging that he has often used throughout his tenure as the Browns coach, that he's always talking about the next man up, playing for the guy next to him, all those things. You know, that may play into it a little bit, that he doesn't want to be like treated as if Deshaun Watson is the sole problem. And then the last thing I would throw out is it's so bad right now that even if you want to change quarterbacks, you probably don't want to change quarterbacks, because you're worried that it's just going to be a disaster for them as well. And you want to get some stability before you make that switch. I think that's the least likely situation, but nevertheless is a theory. Ultimately, like, this whole thing came out, you know, heated up coming out of the press conference on Monday. But ultimately, like, we are all assuming that Kevin Stefanski is a giant liar when he says it's my decision and that I believe in Deshaun and all these other things. I don't believe in Deshaun. I don't think it's going to work. But at some point, I have to take him at his word and not just immediately jump into the first conspiracy theory I can and see what comes of it. Now, the other thing we don't know, how does Jameis Winston really look in practice? How does DTR really look in practice? Are they better than what they're seeing from Deshaun Watson? And, you know, given what you're seeing on the field, I certainly understand that the instinct of, well, it can't be worse than this. But it can. We've seen it. I mean, for all the things that Deshaun Watson is doing horribly, he's not throwing like 4 picks a game or anything like that. So you could just sort of
I
shorten
think
your
a lot
misery, I
of
suppose,
people
by
would
throwing pick
prefer
sixes.
that. I think a
So
lot of people would prefer that, Pete.
there's that. Yeah. I mean, there is that element. So like, I only Kevin Stefanski and the people, his brain trust sort of know the true answer to this. But at least for right now, I think it's entirely Kevin. Well, I should say Kevin Stefanski is. I don't believe he's lying about what he said. I don't feel like he is. I don't know. Whatever you want to say, is going through his head. He must be thinking it. Now you can say that the going full throated, I believe in him, this, that, and the other is just for his sake, and trying to not pile on and all those other things. Maybe that's some truth, but like ultimately, I believe it's his decision, because if it's not, then I would say the same thing I wrote the last time when it was the ownership is making them fire coaches, this, that, and the other. Get the hell out. It's not, because here's the other issue that you're going to run into. If you are playing Deshaun Watson at the behest of ownership, you are ultimately going to lose the locker room at some point. They're not stupid.
Well, that's what I'm saying about Stefanski now.
Right.
Like,
so that is the risk he runs. But I'm saying if this is one more reason why I think ownership's not a part of this.
Yeah. No, I
Kevin
agree with you.
Stefanski would know better than anyone else, if he's got a feeling that the locker room is behind him or not. And if ownership is telling him to do something he knows it's not going to work, then just get yourself fired at this point. You're going to leave again like a hero. You're going to immediately be up for more jobs in the next hiring cycle. You're going to be a really good candidate because you have managed to win in what is most people are painting as an unwinnable situation in Cleveland. That it is a dumpster fire. That is a terrible situation. And he won 11 games twice. He won a playoff game. This, that, and the other. He's had really success in multiple ways. He obviously, his 2023 season is incredible to think about with the amount of injuries they had. That he's going to look like a star to a lot of people in hiring cycles. So
he is.
Rather than try to drag this out, do what just happened in New York. Robert Saleh got fired for doing his job. So if ownership's telling Kevin Stefanski he can't do his job, do it your way, get fired. If that's what it means, you get out of what is a really bad situation right now, and you get a clean start. And everybody's going to put this on Jimmy Haslam because look at what is happening with the Jets. Nobody's really bad-mouthing Robert Saleh about this situation. It's all about Woody Johnson, and it's all about Aaron Rodgers. So that is one more thing. Yeah, and Nathaniel Hackett. So like there has been a suggestion or reports or whatever that Robert Saleh wanted to fire Nathaniel Hackett or relieve him play calling or whatever. And ownership basically said, no, you're going. So okay, and the difference between Robert Saleh and Kevin Stefanski is Robert Saleh doesn't have has his, I think this is the last year of his contract. Maybe he's got one more, but Kevin Stefanski, like he's good. He will be fine. He can go enjoy the rest of the season with his kids and get paid handsomely for the next few years if he wants to, or he can jump back in the cycle. But I just.
Andy would
that
get a
is
job
that
right
is the
away.
question I don't know the answer to is why, but it is what it is to this point.
So I just want to give, and I agree with you 100%. I think it's his decision, but here's where I'm at. Like earlier in this clip, Florio talked about at some point you're affecting everyone because you're playing a guy that nobody believes can do it. The entire country has reached the point where they don't believe he can do it. And
that's a slippery slope.
Okay. Not the entire country.
Because my immediate pushback would be that most people thought Baker Mayfield was couldn't play or Geno Smith couldn't play. That's the only thing I would push back. I'm not saying it's fact or not. I'm just saying right now there's a lot of people that think that he should be sat down. Okay? There. I agree with you.
Take it that far. Okay. And in watching the film, unfortunately, and the all-22, and in listening to analysis on it and everything that you can do and diving into the numbers and everything else, it's about as bad as you can get. And you can even say, okay, the offensive line is terrible. There's been drops, there's been everything. But if you account for all that in a number like adjusted EPA, where all of that is accounted for, he's still second to last in the NFL. And he's given the biggest boost of almost any quarterback in that statistic, right? Because of all the things that are wrong around him. And he's still second to last, only to Bryce Young. There are clean pockets. He is unable to find anyone. It's bad. Like, and I know Stefanski is not an idiot. I know he's a good coach, and I know he sees this. And I do think it is impacting the locker room. I think it's impacting the entire team. When I wrote about the underlying thing with this team, I didn't know what it was, but it very likely could be this. It could be this. It could be Watson. I don't think that's a stretch to say that it could be Watson that is the underlying issue that is impacting this entire team. Like, I don't think people will have a ton of confidence in him going out and scoring for them. And I don't think with his body language or at times being combative to the press and is rude and surly at times, I do think that he's coming across all wrong. I know the players are saying the right things around him, but like, I just don't know if I agree with you. It's Kevin's choice, but I don't know what he's holding on to. Like, because at the very least, Winston can process, he'll stand tall in the pocket, and he'll get the ball out quick. And that gives you a better chance than what you're getting right now. I know it does. Like, I really do know it does. It at least gives you a better chance, and it at least gives you a chance to energize your team and rally around him, which right now they seem somewhat lifeless and they don't have an identity. And furthermore, into the Stefanski thing, and bear with me a second here, they are running almost all Dorsey stuff right now.
No. That's a common thing that people keep throwing out there. That's not true.
Okay. If you go back and watch what they ran, what their offense looked like at the beginning of last year, it looks a lot like what the Browns are running right now. Almost like dead similar. Like the same route concepts, the same shotgun, the same, all that stuff is the same as what they were running at the beginning of last year in Buffalo. So
that's definitely in there, but they are also running concepts that the Browns ran last year and they aren't executing.
Okay.
Perfect example.
That's fine.
The perfect example, which supports your point of Watson being the problem, is the over route that Watson missed Amari Cooper by like 5 yards, wide open, got to have it. That's a route that the Browns ran constantly last year. The Browns ran different personnel packages, but they still run a lot of the same concepts passing wise that they did last year. Now, certainly Dorsey has a big impact, but in general, the Browns took what they liked about last year and just got rid of the stuff they didn't and replaced it with Dorsey stuff. Now, in terms of, percentages, I don't know the answer to that, but there are undoubtedly any number of situations where I'm sitting there watching them do things that I've seen them do a number of times previous to this, and they're not executing those either. So that is where I sort of get lost in the whole, well, Stefanski's running Dorsey's offense. Well, he's not really. It's a mesh of what both of them want to do.
Sure. Okay. I'm sure there's staples of what Stefanski wants to run in there, but there's a lot of Dorsey mixed in there too. Cause you can see it when you go back and watch Buffalo. It looks just like what the Browns are doing right now. It's in the first 5 weeks last year. So I'm just saying, like, whatever they're running right now, they're not good at it. Yeah. Whatever they're calling right now, they can't execute it.
Yes. So that's everything.
The logical plan, or if you were going to try to save the season, the only thing that makes sense to me, Pete, and call me crazy, but the only thing that makes sense to me, because it's not Watson, he can't do it. At least right now, he can't. He's not even close. Personally, I don't think he's close. Is you get a guy in there like Winston who will get rid of the ball quickly, and you revert course. And I know it's a referendum on everything you did this offseason, but you revert course back to what Stefanski knows best: under center, shotgun, run the ball, go back to what he knows best, what he called and has had success with up until this year. So that, I think, gives them their best chance to win at this point.
I'll disagree on. I'll agree on the anyone else playing quarterback at this point. I'm not going to argue with that. Like, that is not my position. I've simply pointed out why I've suggested why Stefanski may not. As I said, I don't believe in Watson at all. I will not shed one tear when he's eventually benched or, as Terry Bradshaw said, put down. But in terms of the offense, I would say this: you would pare down the offense, but I would not say you're just going back to last year's offense, because one, not
in full capacity, but like get back to what Kevin runs and Kevin has been successful doing. You don't have to do exactly what you did last year, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like,
yes,
I think you need to.
Yeah, I agree. But like, to the extent, like, that's why I say you pare down the playbook. You find the stuff that what works, and you just keep doing. And now ultimately that limits what you can do, and it's going to run into some problems, but you take that and you sort of start building back outward as you can go.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that, but I do think a lot of that is what Dorsey's implemented because they practiced it for months. So
it looks like crap.
I guess because they don't block, they don't catch, and the quarterback doesn't do well. And I think, to your point, better quarterback play would be a tide that lifts all boats in this scenario. But I also think that so much of this, and this is where I sort of can see why Stefanski might be holding off, even though as long as I see it in practice, if I see Jameis Winston is better in practice, I'm making the move. It's just that they just got to play better, like, period. And
right.
We can what's really frustrating about this, like, and this is what, and this is going to come up at some point in one of these videos. Like, who could run this offense really without too much of an issue? David Bell could run the offense without an issue because he just find a spot and get open. And you're going to hear they don't have enough speed, and yet David Bell would just get open and catch the ball. Like, so it's really hard for me to just be like, well, this stuff, this stuff just doesn't work. And some of that is the other problem is, like, Jerry Jeudy has no reference point. Like, Jerry Jeudy is obviously brought in, so whatever he's been running is what he's been running. That's the other thing you sort of run into is you have guys, and Deontay Foreman's in the same boat, where they weren't here. And someday we're eventually going to see Nyheim Hines, I think, maybe by week 18, that we're going to see what he does and what that looks like. So, yes, I think that all these are problems but I think it ends up being paring down the playbook as opposed to necessarily saying, we just want to go to what worked last year. I understand why you're saying that, but I think ultimately they're at a point now where at least some of the stuff Dorsey has implemented has to be effective, because this is the other thing that we constantly see is we go back and watch the tape and we're sitting there going, he's open, and the quarterback's just not getting the ball. The quarterback's eyes are on the other side of the field for whatever reason. There are times where it's legitimate for the quarterback's eyes to be on the other side and have a guy open on the backside. But that is where so much of this starts. But, like, there are a lot of real problems that just have to get better. And it's one of those things where, like, between the injuries and everything else, there is some element of they just got to get some success. And I wrote about this, and we've talked about this. It feels like the offense is the offense is fragile, that they're afraid they are going to break something every drive. And they play it like that. They are so unaccustomed to being successful, of just playing, that they press so hard and treat everything like it's the end of the world, because they know deep down, if we get a penalty or we have a miscue, or let's say we got to the 2-yard line, as we saw the third quarter last week, if we screw this up, it's going to be, this is the end for us. And that is a huge stumbling block, regardless of what they want. So, like I said, I agree with a lot of what you said. I would push back slightly, but ultimately they're going to find a way to do better, period.
I think what you said about the offense is right. You don't just go back to that. I think you're right. You pare it down. You take what you think you can work with Winston. And then you, like you said, you start to build out from there, because obviously there's going to be wrinkles and whatnot that come from that, right? Like on a week-to-week basis, that's a natural process. But I would just argue that ultimately, I think Winston would give you a boost. I
think he gets the ball out faster immediately.
He will get the ball out faster, and I think he automatically gives your team a lift, and I think he gives you a better chance to win. So that's the thing that I question Kevin about right now. Like, you're standing up there saying that you're not going to make a change and all this stuff, and I agree with you. It's his decision to make.
Yes,
he has the leverage, and he is making the decision, but I think he's making the wrong one, and I don't know why at this point.
Right. And that's the thing. Well, the other thing I just want to quickly note, some of this has to be through the lens of what Jameis is comfortable with. Again, was not here last year. And that's the other part, is Kevin Stefanski is a guy who likes to empower the quarterback. So Deshaun is picking these plays in the sense of, this is the menu he wants to work from. Jameis's menu might be different. I'm sure it will be on some level. DTR's is probably a little different than both of them, whatever. But that's the other one thing. The other thing is, instead of worrying about the owner, that's the question that you would ask. And I know they sort of asked it and didn't get a great answer, but I think hammering down on a way to come up with a better way to ask that question. I know, I think somebody asked, why are you confident in, Deshaun Watson? But I do wonder, if you frame it like you did, where you're saying, hey, the EPA is this, the whatever is this. I don't think Kevin Stefanski is going to say stats are for losers. He may say he may say the stat is a team stat, but I think that is a more effective way to ask that question and potentially get a little bit more insight, even if it's just to say that the team just is not good enough right now, which is not a satisfying answer, I grant, but at least that gets you sort of into more of what he's thinking. But that's ultimately these are the questions. It's truth serum, sodium pentothal. Could we? What is he really thinking? These are the things we don't know in terms of that, and why he's doing this. But to this point, it's his call.
Yeah, it's his call. I'm shocked that for the locker room, for morale, and for a chance to win, knowing it's his call, that he hasn't made a different one. I'm surprised.
And the last thing may be timing. It may be that they want to get through Philly and then make a move when they go home. And the other part of that might be key is Cincinnati seems to be the week they've sort of circled for Nick Chubb to return. Maybe they'll have a few other guys back by that point, that it might feel a little bit more comfortable in terms of making that switch. But until it happens, we don't know the answer. But it is, to your point, that's the question we really want to know the answer to. And then it's just frustrating to watch and continue down this road.
Yeah, I can't. It's no fun for anybody, and it can't be fun for him to watch Watson do this anymore.
Now, wait for Deshaun Watson to throw for 290, 3 touchdowns, and then everybody sit here and go, now what?
Don't care.
That's the chaos theory element of this, where it's
I don't care at this point.
No, I don't either. I don't.
Up and down.
That's where I sort of look at this and go, well, now of course he's going to have crazy success and then leave us. Now what the hell do we do?
Of course he will. Right. It feels like when he plays that they get like 6 or 7, 8, maybe legitimate potential completions a game because he's always running around and bailing on pockets. And a lot of that is in his flaw. He's just, at this point, he's just conditioned to have a terrible offensive line. But like at some point, you have to change. Like, did you see the like absurdly lackadaisical 7-step drops he was taking in the high red zone? Like,
I know what you're
what are
talking
they
about.
doing? What
Yeah,
are they
look,
doing?
that I don't know. Here's what I do sit here and wonder about, like on the throw to Jordan Akins and the couple passes before they got to the third quarter to the 2-yard line, where it almost felt like Watson was angry and just said, "Screw it, I'm going to get back to my third step, put my foot in the ground, and just throw it, and whatever happens, happens."
That's what he
There's
should
a
be
part
doing.
of me, and I don't think that's true, but there's a part of me that sits there and wonder if he's just like, "Screw it, I'm just going to whip this as hard as I can and hope it works." And he hit Akins for the touchdown. He hit Amari Cooper on a couple passes, but like that's what makes this so frustrating. If he was just doing that and seeing the field, and this is where I say, see, his eyes are so slow right now to me.
So slow.
Is he doesn't look like he's ready to make those throws, and then immediately defers to drop his eyes, try to create. He's too slow to create the way he wants to. He underestimates how fast everybody else is. And then even when he gets out, the few times he does, then he can't make anything happen after that fact either. So, yeah, and I can't help but think that like in the coaching meetings and the quarterback room and all this stuff, they're not sitting here going, "Look at these plays. 1, 2, 3, boom, balls out, good stuff happens," as opposed to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, pray, duck, dive, dodge, and then throw a duck. Like, so I don't, this is where, you wish we had a fly on the wall type stuff, but
yeah. Fly on the wall. Like, why is your drop so like lackadaisical? Like, why is there no urgency to it? And then like when he's there, it's not like you see other quarterbacks in the league, like read, boom, your head's moving. They're going. His eyes never leave, and then like before, and it's not like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3, and then out. And sometimes PD gets to the top of a drop and he's not even ready to throw. There's a guy open and he's not even ready to throw. Like he's got the ball down by his waist. It's so like, I don't like how, and that Stefanski's good enough coach to coach that better than that. Like, what's he doing? It's crazy.
So the play that everybody's, you see that's gone around is that mesh route. Yeah, it looks like Dan Fouts. It looks like Dan Fouts out of the 70s and 80s, where it's that old school 7-step drop where your shoulders aren't turned at all. But you're right. He doesn't look ready to throw. And if he was, he could have hit Jerry Jeudy both initially and then even hit Jerry Jeudy coming back out of his break, like when he just goes back to the open field and you're still sitting there. You could have still thrown this and it would have been a touchdown. Like, it's maddening to me. That it's just, you watch it and you're sitting there going, this is 6 points. And this is the stuff where, like, again, this is where I go, Kevin Stefanski's a good coach. Whatever they're dialing up, it's not always working because there are plays where we've seen this covered and he has to throw it away. It's just bad. But there are so many plays where we're sitting there going, just throw the damn thing and it would be there. And, why are you allowing this to continue? That's the whole thing. You get into the whole Nick Sabanism. Either you coach it or you allow it. And I'm sure he doesn't coach it, but we are currently seeing him allow it. And that part is maddening.
That was perfectly said. That's where I'm at. Like, this does not seem like him to allow this, right? Like
sure. Yeah. And that's where I understand where people can lean into this whole thing about ownership is making him do this. But like I said, it just doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't make sense. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, that's where I'm sitting there going, will the real Kevin Stefanski sort of stand up at this point? And, the other part, I guess there's some element where he's just beaten down right now, which sucks. Just the amount of issues that he's dealing with. And obviously you got to get over it. You got to get ready for the next week. But, it's possible. And nevertheless, isn't going to fix the problem. So hopefully if they don't come out playing better against the Philadelphia team that is beatable, even though they are way healthier and had a week to prepare extra, at that point, I don't know what you're saying, because I saw him regress badly from back to Dallas game, to me, bad. And that's enough for me, for anyone to make the case that he should be benched. Now it's a question of what's the holdup, and that's ultimately what Kevin Stefanski has to answer to himself, to his coaches, and to the players in that building.
All right, here we go. Let's finish this video and get on to another one here. You're watching the React with Pete Smith. Follow him on Twitter @_Pete Smith _. My name is Brad Ward. Hit like and subscribe. Take a second. It's free. It only takes a second, as I just said, and it helps us out a ton. Plus, you're going to want to watch the show again. If you're over on X, hop on over to youtube.com/Orange and Brown Report, and make sure you tune into our shows every night, and go over to the website, obr.com. Here we go. Let's finish this video.
Feel bad for Kevin Stefanski, because I think his hands are tied in this situation. I don't think he has the power to even bench Deshaun Watson.
You're right. Jason Garrett was saying, well, this is what the coach should do. Yeah, if the coach is allowed to do it.
I don't think so. I tried to.
There it is. See, this is what everybody thinks, Pete, until they would if they would read your article or listen to your logic, they would say, oh, well, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. But this is what everybody thinks around the country right now. So I don't know. It's crazy.
Bringing it up last night on Football Night America. I said, can he really do that? I don't know.
No.
Because we know the analytics department has a big say in that team. And then, of course, the owner has a say. And he was a big part of why they got this all done. So I don't know where it goes. But either way, I do think Jameis Winston would help their team. He would be better for their team.
Give him a spark.
It would be good for Deshaun Watson. Let him sit on the sideline a little bit. Let him take a deep breath. Let him reconfigure his life and what's going on the football field, and see if he can calm down, what he's thinking and seeing up on the field.
And if he's got a problem with it, guess what? It's his problem.
Yeah.
Because it's deserved at this point. Let's have a listen to Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson from yesterday after the loss to the Commanders.
Yeah, we're not changing quarterbacks. We need to play better. I need to coach better. And that's really what it is.
You got to continue to take what the defense give us, at the end of the day, So I'm rocking with whatever the coach's decision is. Like I said, we don't listen to the outside world, regardless of what it is. So, that's all I can do.
No. Yes, you do. Lies.
Is worry about what I can control.
We don't listen to the outside
I
world.
don't know.
Sometimes
Maybe he doesn't have a TV in his money bin. I have no idea. By the way, I did not know that Chris Sims suggested that Ken Kovacs was involved in the decision-making process, since Paul DiPodesta is not in charge of analytics. That is Ken Kovac's job. Paul DiPodesta is a completely separate department.
Doesn't he have something to do with it, though? Isn't that like his
Kovacs or
expertise?
Paul DiPodesta?
DiPodesta.
DiPodesta is in these high-level meetings, but I sort of always look at it like he is he's the consigliere of this whole thing, as opposed to necessarily a high-level decision maker. I've always looked at it as Paul DiPodesta isn't like people like to think. Oh, he's leaning on them to make draft picks or do certain things, this, that, and the other. I think the biggest thing Paul DiPodesta ultimately does is he comes up with he sort of tries to get them to continue to stay on what is their collective vision, whatever that is. You've heard about the guardrails and some of those other things which have evolved over time, and some of the other things, but it's just trying to get them to focus on, is this going to fit within what we're trying to do long-term, short-term, whatever, as opposed to you should do this. And the other thing Paul DiPodesta does is he is big into creating processes that try to make things more efficient. And in that respect, again, people think people suggest that he's disliked or whatever, but a lot of teams he does not do cap management at all. The other part of his job is sort of creating processes for efficiency. And in that regard, other teams have sort of looked at what the Browns are doing in certain areas and are going, that's kind of smart. So
yeah, he's a incredibly intelligent man. Like, he's very, very smart, right? And I do think I have never had a problem with D. Podesta being a part of this organization. I do think he has a say in some of the things that maybe he shouldn't, but that's not his fault.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you have 4 people in the room, Jimmy Haslam, Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry, and Paul DePodesta, just by virtue of him being there, there is some influence. Although this year, I think that number is 5 in a lot of those meetings, and I think one of those is Vrabel, has been in some of those higher meetings. Now, I can't verify that part. I know he's been in higher level discussions than people realize. But yeah, it's
Really,
it is what it is in terms of people love to blame the guy they don't. I don't know what that person does. He must be evil type thing.
yeah.
Applies to more than just sports.
All right, we're never going to get to the next video if we stick with that one much longer, because we got to get to this next one. All right, we're switching over to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, reacting to all of this same stuff and asking some other questions. There's some good and bad and ugly in this, all mixed in, so we'll react to it all as we are ones to do. All right.
Jay, I have 3 clips I want to play you. They're about a minute to a minute and a half each. It'll be about 3 minutes total from different media members across the country. Not local, these are national media members, speaking on the current situation of the Browns quarterback decision. This first one comes from Dan Orlovsky.
Pause it real quick. The Cleveland. Here's the problem with the national perspective. And these are not bad people. They're not, they don't know what they don't know, which is they don't know off the top, since they're covering most of the time 32 teams. They don't sort of necessarily have at top of mind that these guys signed contract extensions. And the other thing they really don't know about is the stadium. They're not sitting here thinking about what the Browns are trying to do in terms of the Dome Stadium element. So that is a huge missing piece. So if you are a 30,000 foot view and you look down at the Browns, it's very easy to come to the conclusion, well, management must be doing it. Though, again, all these people they cite keep mentioning the front office, which, again, if you pay attention to this team, doesn't wash when you're saying that, basically suggesting that Andrew Berry is forcing Kevin Stefanski to do anything when that's not the relationship that they have.
Agreed. I also think playing into it is that there is a level of respect for Stefanski that they think he would have pulled the trigger by now.
Yeah, there is undoubtedly people like Kevin Stefanski. That is undoubtedly a part of this, both nationally and locally.
And the fact that he hasn't is making them think it's somebody else's decision.
Correct.
The current situation of the Browns quarterback decision. This first one comes from Dan Orlovsky on Get Up This Morning.
The Cleveland Browns are in the worst situation in pro sports. They're done, and so is Deshaun Watson. If you want to see a situation where the head coach has absolutely no say of who's playing on the field, it's happening in Cleveland. Kevin Stefanski is a 2-time coach of the year. He's a brilliant offensive mind. And this offense looks nothing like the offense that he won 2-time coach of the year with. They're in an awful situation. And by every measure, if you just watch the game and then you look at the stats, their offensive performance, and specifically Deshaun Watson's offensive performance, is the worst in the NFL. They're done.
Should they bench him?
Yes, they should have benched him week 1. Week 1, they should have started thinking about Jameis Winston.
You did say that,
But I don't think this is a head coach decision, and I don't think this is a general manager decision. I truly believe this is from the owner, because there's no way that you would watch this football tape over the last 5 weeks and say that's our best opportunity. Look, this is why it's the worst situation in pro sports. $150 million.
They still own.
$150 million.
Yeah, to be clear.
They might have $150 million guaranteed to a quarterback and justify taking a first-round draft pick at quarterback next year.
So that was Dan Orlovsky.
They better start thinking about that.
Mm-hmm. That part is true, but here's the thing, and I'm going to keep pointing this out. Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry have the ability to get out of this situation if they want to. If that's the edict that has been put down, they can get out, and they can go away scot-free and look great in the process.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I don't know that he's plugged in enough or has contacts in the Browns locker room to speak on that definitively. I think he's just giving his opinion there. But when Chris Sims said it yesterday,
well, we have that. We're going to get
to
those. Yep.
When you listen to this, think about this. I think Sims said it with a little more authority, and
he did not.
He's removed from the league as well, but I think he might be hearing this from someone in the organization that knows, because it didn't sound like he was guessing. He sounded like he was making a definitive statement.
Well, I think it's common sense just watching.
I agree. And Orlovsky, by the way, nothing he said was not true.
There's no way.
Nothing he said.
There is no way Kevin Stefanski wants to keep playing Deshaun Watson.
No.
No.
Okay, there it is, right? That's what people think. There's no way that
there's no argument being made. It's just, I don't believe this, so it must be the other thing. Like this is the thing I keep getting. Nobody actually argues with anything I've said in terms of the merits of the argument. They just say, but the owner's still going to do it. Okay, but like he's got a lot to lose. So there is a reason for it. Kevin Stefanski has a lot more leverage than people think he does in this decision. He had the ability to negotiate his own deal. He has been successful. He's literally the only thing that's ever been successful, truly, for Jimmy Haslam. He took a lot of ish for Jimmy Haslam through this whole process. And granted, he may have deserved it if for his part in acquiring Deshaun Watson. But like, if Deshaun Watson was going to be the issue, then they shouldn't have signed him to extensions, and they could have fired him at that point or whatever. But like,
right.
Again, you can say common sense says it does. I'm telling you, there's a whole lot more sense in Jimmy Haslam's bank account that say it does not.
No, yeah, I agree with you. I'm just saying, like, that's people that aren't following the reasoning that you have laid out are immediately just snapping judgment that it makes sense because Stefanski's smarter than this. There's no way he wants to keep playing it.
In which case, I'm offering career advice for Kevin Stefanski. He may not unsolicited. That I understand.
Yeah,
get out. Yeah. Get out.
Yeah. Well, I don't want him to leave, but I want him to sit him down. Now, so I agree with you that it's not Jimmy's not forcing this because he doesn't care. Is it possible, Pete? Is it possible that we are undervaluing Stefanski's pride in trying to go get Watson? Like,
it is possible by virtue of being a head coach that sort of comes with it, which is also another reason why I would say this makes it very unlikely that he'd be just willing to go along with the owner saying you have to do this. But yeah, that is possible, and unfortunately can get in the way. Now, we've got to see where this goes. But like, this is not I'm not trying to denigrate Jason Lloyd. He's fine. Just in this moment, he's not making an argument. He's just saying, I cannot believe this, so it must be this other thing.
Yeah, agreed. All right.
I hear these next two clips, and then we'll dive into it. They're both from Chris Sims as part of an NBC discussion. Other ones that play breakdown. Here's the first.
And you're right. Sims sounds no more definitive than anybody else does. He's just also speculating, I would guess, here.
Correct. And he says, when he says the front office, he means Andrew Berry. Like, again, that's not the relationship they have.
First one from the NBC pregame show last night.
Right now, Deshaun Watson, with his contract, the trade they made to the Houston Texans, has totally handcuffed the whole organization. If it was any other quarterback in football, we would be talking about benching him.
Yeah, that was the Lowe's home team help.
We are talking
about Kevin Stefanski saying after the game that's not the plan. He's sticking with Deshaun Watson.
Oh, I think you guys chime in here, but I think it goes back to the owner and the GM a little bit here.
Yeah, your number one job as a head coach is to play the right guys, the guys that give you the best chance to win. And you can't watch the Cleveland Browns and say this guy gives you the best chance to win. You lose credibility in the locker room when you let other factors come involved. Money, when he was drafted, how long the contract is. He's got to sit back and take courage Kevin Stefanski and say, what's the best thing for our team? I think right now, give Jameis Winston a shot. Maybe there's some new energy. Maybe there's a spark in this team. It doesn't mean this is the decision for the rest of your life. You can make a two-way decision. A few weeks from now, maybe you bring him back into it. But they can't go down the road that they're going down right now. They have no chance to win.
I can't believe I'm saying this. Jason Garrett is 100% right. I've never thought I would ever say that about Jason Garrett, but he's 100% right. That's it right there. He understands. Yep. He's been a head coach. That's the job. Those are the decisions you make. And if the owner is not going to let you do them, you're not the head coach at that point. You are fake. And then your job is to get out of there. And he coached under Jerry Jones, like of all people. So again, it doesn't hold water.
Yeah, he nailed it right there for sure.
The guys in the locker room. Think about if you're playing defense right now, we always talk about those quarterbacks that always give the team hope. I know we can win. We got that. They don't have that right now. The defense isn't looking at Deshaun Watson like, if we make this stop, he'll go win. I think this defense is coming into games like, hey, it doesn't matter what we do.
If we don't win, we're not going to win.
They're going to find a way to lose the game on the other side.
Well, what about, do you think Stefanski even has the power to make that call? That's the big thing. I think it's an ownership GM thing that's getting involved here right now.
Guys, I'll ask that very question.
The only thing I would push back on defensively is like they're not playing well. Like we can talk all about how the defense may not feel like if they get a stop that the offense is going to deliver, but how many games have they been good? It's been basically Jacksonville, and even then, you know, they had some success, but like Dallas, they gave up a ton of plays. They gave up a ton of plays to the Daniel Jones scored 3 touchdowns in the first half. You know,
I thought they came out playing pretty well against the Commanders until I thought that like they came out with a good game plan. They slowed him down like for the first few trips until that one play where he kind of broke contain and JOK and Delpit ran into each other and he throws the ball to McLaurin. After that, it was all downhill. There's a big run from Eckler also there, and then the play where JOK just sprints right at him like a madman. Instead of throttling down or whatever.
Additionally, they had, I believe, a 10-0 lead against the Giants.
Yeah,
I believe they had a 10-0 lead against the Raiders.
Yes.
So, like, I understand what he's saying, and there will come a point where that is absolutely a real thing. But it's really difficult for me to sort of to accept that when the offense has come out and had 10-0 leads twice, and you're sitting here going, we don't believe we can win. You were up 10-0 twice. So, like, it's a weak excuse, even though inevitably he's going to be right. We're just not there yet.
Yeah. To you guys, who's making the call on the quarterback? Is it Kevin Stefanski or is it someone above? Jason?
Well, I'll go back to 2021. You mentioned the Baker season in 2021. That was an ownership-driven decision to play Baker, even through the shoulder injury. I've said this a million times. They were
wait. What do you agree? There's no way, right? That was a Baker decision. It felt like
Baker decision, and then Stefanski ultimately, and then we saw at the end of the year why they stuck with Baker Mayfield, because Case Keenum stunk out the joint against the backup Bengals. Like I understand why. Like if they, again, if this was an ownership-driven decision, you're telling me that Kevin Stefanski was powerless to play the quarterback he wanted, then why is he here? Why do you go through this? Get out.
We're trying to make a decision on his contract and whether or not to extend him. The answer internally at that point was no. They wanted more evidence he was worth it. So even though he was hurt, they kept running him out there. It was an ownership-driven decision.
Which, think about how irresponsible that is, Jason. He's not giving you an accurate take as to who he is or what he can do.
Yes, but if you don't play him at all, the answer was no.
Okay, then the answer is no. Then move on.
Yeah, but while
but to both of them, that's not what happened.
Right. And look, Baker Mayfield has come out since and said he regrets not getting the shoulder surgery.
Yes.
Like, it was his decision not to do it. He wanted to play it through it. and
He was
made a big
powering
point about
through.
it. He wanted to stay, keep playing for his team and all this stuff. And then it blew up in his face. And this is where the feelings started getting hurt when he sat out the last game, which I didn't blame him for because they were officially ruled out of the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, Baker Mayfield, this is part of his whole, growing up, maturing, redemption arc is that he wanted to play through the shoulder. He wanted to get that contract. He wanted all the things. And then he was very hurt that people were basically were not like sort of understanding of him playing poorly, especially down the stretch, that he was doing this through pain. And that really bothered him. And ultimately had some issues with the locker room and some other things. But like, you can't say that ownership made Baker Mayfield not play. You can't say that ownership again you could try to make the argument that ownership made Kevin Stefanski play an injured player, but it just doesn't make any sense.
So to the chat, I think what happened that year is he was hurt but wanted to play because he wanted to earn the contract, and he thought he could earn the contract. Kevin Stefanski then has the choice of either playing a player that says that he can play, because it's not up to ownership. If, like the question in the chat is here, can't coaching tell him to go get a surgery and sit him down? I guess, but not really. If he's
They could have placed him against his will on injured reserve, which obviously would have been
a bad
PR nightmare. You would have had issues with the players' union at that point, and done real damage potentially to other players in the locker room who sit there and go, you can't, if I'm not willing to do this, you can't make me do this. Like that becomes a real issue. So yeah, Baker decided to play through it. He was the best option that year. Case Keenum was not good. He was cooked at that point. And that's what Kevin Stefanski went to practice seeing every day was Baker Mayfield was better than Case Keenum. So he put Baker Mayfield out there and it went really badly, but yeah, I mean,
he was their best chance to win. And that's what he kept saying. He gives us our best chance to win. That's what he kept saying. Somebody else said they agree with Jay. I think I agree with him that, yes, he's right in that it's a flawed thing to think that you're going to get an accurate portrayal of what Baker Mayfield is by playing him while he's injured. And I think that's what the person in the chat was referencing. Yes, that's true, but nobody was trying to do that. I don't think nobody was trying to run him out on the field and evaluate him for a contract at the same time, were they?
Kind of.
That's
because
tough, right?
To Jay's point, if you put it now, I don't think it would have been realistic, but if you're saying we shut him down for the year, and then you're deciding you're immediately not picking up his fifth year option and moving on, you've just made the case why Baker Mayfield had to play through the injury and make it a mess. Like to me, I feel like they probably pick up the fifth year option if he sat out that year. That's my best guess.
Yes.
But I don't know that. I can't say that with certainty. So like this is where you ultimately end up. And he could say it's an ownership thing. It's an ownership thing as far as if ownership basically told Baker Mayfield, if you get the surgery, we're not going to pick up your fifth year option. But that's not, no one's doing that. Like these are things that don't happen.
Right. Correct.
You can't really disagree with that, but I'm just saying that was the reason why they kept running him out there. That was an ownership-driven decision to keep running him out there because they had to make a decision on whether or not to extend him and give him another contract. So I fully believe this is another ownership-driven decision that, and to go back, I don't want to go all the way back to where we were, but it is important to say, like, when you invest the money that they invested in Deshaun, when you give up the trade capital that they gave up to get him, of course you want to do everything you can to try and make it work. So, I mean, I've talked to people across the sports. I've talked to NBA people and NFL people who said, yeah, you got to do whatever you can to try and make this guy comfortable and make him happy. And so that's why.
At what point do you pull ripcord?
Now.
Okay.
We're there.
So we've seen enough.
Yeah, it didn't work. Like you tried revamping the offense. But you also, we've talked about this on the show. You don't have the personnel to match the system. You touched on it earlier. I wrote about it a couple weeks ago. They have the slowest receivers in the league. And they don't create separation. I can give you all the data you want to back that up.
And false. I checked it.
Well, by all means.
I checked it. As soon as he said that, I was like, I don't think that's right. So I checked it. Through 5 weeks, they have at PFF, they have a separation percentage. They also have a separation chart as well, where Elijah Moore is actually very high on the list. That's a separation score. This is a separation percentage, which eliminates anybody with less than 30 opportunities, right? So you have to have a minimum of 30 opportunities to separate. It ranks like the top 80 guys in the NFL, wide receivers, okay? Number 20 in the NFL overall, 20th overall is Amari Cooper through 5 weeks. 65.75% separation percentage. Number 19 in front of him, just in front of him, they tell me this is not ironic. Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk 19, Cooper 20. You want to know who's number 1 through 5 weeks in the NFL? Got a guess?
Don't tell me it's Jerry Jeudy. I can't.
It's not. It's Luke McCaffrey.
Oh, okay.
Interesting, right? All
right. Yeah, he's a good athlete.
Yeah, good athlete, separates well. All right. So Cooper's 20th overall in the NFL. That's good. 65.75. Jerry Jeudy is 42nd in the NFL, which is pretty high for Jeudy, right? 60%. He's just behind Jackson Smith and Jigba, Stephon Diggs, and Tyler Lockett to give you a little bit of a range that he's in. And he's ahead of Pickens, Xavier Worthy, Jalen Waddle, Nico Collins, and Drake London. Ahead of all those guys.
Which,
FYI.
By the way, I've talked about this before. If there are a lot of people who are like denigrating like Jabari Thrash because he hasn't been on the field yet, even though he's a 5th-round pick. Any one of almost universally, everybody would take Marvin Harrison Jr., right? Marvin Harrison Jr. is not fast, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is not playing well to start out the season. So, like, this is where we get into. And the other guy you mentioned that's really interesting, Drake London, who I loved coming out of that draft. He's not a burner by any stretch, but that's not the job. It's to get open and be good at football. He does that on a consistent basis. So those things, you crushed it with the data here, but like the wide receiver issue is not the problem. They're going to try to make it a problem. It's not the problem. Could they use more talent? Yeah. Are they going to have to find somebody when Amari Cooper inevitably leaves? Yeah. But that is not what is holding this team back. We see it on tape every week. Guys are open. There are opportunities, and they're not hitting them. And if your argument is that they don't have to run what offense? Because as I mentioned earlier, David Bell was getting open in this offense, and he's slow. He's objectively slow. So you're focusing on the wrong details. And he may be referencing his week 1 article, because I believe that's when this whole thing came out. I don't know what has come back since, but your data is compelling and points out how silly this is. And we focus on the wrong stuff because, again, otherwise we're just going to get in this situation. We're just going to go, hey, 40 times, let's go. Who's fast? And not focusing on football speed or getting open, which the Browns have guys who can do that.
And last point is, Elijah Moore is also on the list at 74th.
Yeah, he's always
53.33%. On the other score, he's very high on the list. He is ahead of Michael Pittman, is right behind him at 75. So and they're one of the few teams that had 3 wide receivers on the list. So this point that they don't have enough speed or they can't separate is false.
Agreed. Jerry Jeudy has been on the gun over 22 miles per hour. They've got guys who can run. Like, it's silliness. And that, it's not helpful.
Right.
So why are they trying to run a spread type system with downfield throws when they don't have the speed and they don't have the guys who can create separation? They don't have the personnel to match the scheme. They're trying to fit the entire scheme around one guy. And guess what? He can't do it anymore either.
The GM, listen, at some point, y'all are responsible for picking the players. How many times have I told you about Project Stockpile? And this is the thing I get so annoyed with. Every single time there's a receiver's name mentioned, every single time there's like, hey, you need to go up in the draft and get a receiver. You need to trade up. No. We like our receiver room. Okay, well, how much you like it right now?
I think you can win with these receivers if you play the way that they're meant to be played, and it's not this.
This is who we had last year.
What is it?
Yeah.
How
and it worked.
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Operation Stockpile wanted Deshaun Watson and was his fake lawyer may continue to be. So miss me with that. But the data is compelling. It's there for anyone to see. They get open. The ball, when it gets there, is dropped. That's a huge issue. And Amari Cooper is the number one guy for that. But Jerry Jeudy drops what should have been a touchdown this past week. Those are real issues. But in terms of, can they run fast enough? Can they get open? Yes. They get open in the offense the Browns are currently running, and they're not doing enough with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're not doing enough catching the ball. So it's both ways.
Different offense.
So here's the thing. If they ain't going to let you bench him and they ain't going to let you make that move, well, guess what? There are a couple of things that you can do. You can revert back to what you were calling. You can revert back and say, you know what? That offense ain't going to work. We better figure out a way to pivot.
Well, they may view that as a fireable offense, too.
Well, listen, if you can't call the offense and you can't bench nobody, you're not a coach anymore.
That's what.
Just quit.
100% agree. Are you the head coach or are you a puppet?
Yeah.
And right now, he's a puppet. And unfortunately, it's a shame because he's a good man and a good coach. We're seeing
my argument for
global decisions being made by a guy who made his fortune running a truck stop. And I've told this story a number of times on the air. One of the 3 ESPN insiders that was part of this discussion, there were 3 of them.
This is so great.
I don't like this. And I get this from people like, I don't need your baggage. Like, this does not help me. You're mad at players for years of your suffering that have been here 20 minutes. It's not their problem. It's your problem. Seek a therapist. Mental health. Big champion of mental health. Take care of it.
Self-care. There you go.
Don't bring your misery onto these players, even as bad as they're playing right now. And they're awful right this second. But it is not their fault that the Browns have sucked for 20-some years and you feel bad.
Yeah. This one is great. It's 10 years ago, 3 ESPN insiders, small flex. Here we go.
Against me, when they were all 3 begging me, pick a new team. One of the 3 texted me again yesterday, and I looked back. I hadn't heard from him in over a year. I looked back.
Why
and
not?
The last time he texted me was when Deshaun Watson was not playing well earlier in the season, and he said, I begged you then, I'm begging you still. Yesterday, I get another text. It says, I've tried telling you, this conversation goes back almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
And his premise was, please pick a new team, and here's why. Jimmy's never selling. Jimmy thinks he's a football mind, and Jimmy makes decisions he has no business making. And then he brought in JW and said, and by the way, if it's not Jimmy, it's going to be his son-in-law, whose only qualification to run a football team is he married the right girl. and this is stuff I've been hearing from these guys for almost 10 years. And as I'm watching all this dumpster fire Sunday after Sunday, I hear those voices swimming in my head. And if
like I get it's been bad and it's been really bad and disappointing this year. But like, he's making it out like it's one thing, but they've been competitive and went to the playoffs twice in the last 4 years, won 11 games last year. So, I mean, we go from zero to dumpster fire faster than any city in the world, I think.
Well, look, I mean, it's undeniable that Jimmy Haslam did meddle and did dictate. And look what it got him. You know, obviously the Johnny Manziel thing was a gigantic disaster, which was completely foreseeable. They didn't get out of the way of it. He does the whole Agent McCarron fiasco with Hugh Jackson, which fortunately was stopped. So he has done this.
Broken fax machine.
Yes, he has done these things, and it has blown up in his face consistently. Now, ultimately, they should not have made the Deshaun Watson trade. Now, again, Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry have to own the blame that they have for this. But this is what happens. Anytime things are bad, anytime things go bad with this team, I already mentioned Paul DePodesta, but this is the boogeyman, another boogeyman that comes out. And then what, you know, Jimmy Haslam must be getting involved. Jimmy Haslam must be doing this or that. We just say this stuff without evidence because of previous behavior. And it's possible, but if it happens, then I would expect Kevin Stefanski to get himself fired and get out. But we don't have evidence. We just say, well, he did this before and apparently has not learned anything from it. And even though he had success, like he let them do their jobs for this long, but now he's getting back. It strains credulity on this type of stuff. It's very frustrating. And again, it just comes off like bad sports baggage.
Yes. The one thing we don't know, though, Pete, the one thing that is an unknown, well, I mean, you can speculate about it. The one thing we don't know about the Watson thing is that we know that the idea was born of Berry and Stefanski. And we know that at that point, at some point, the owner was in. Right. But like, we don't know what happened from once they were ruled out to him signing this contract, and whether Berry or Stefanski thought that was a good decision to give him $230 million guaranteed. Like, we don't know what happened in those days of negotiating. So could Jimmy have gone rogue at that point? Maybe. I don't know.
I think it's fair to say he got too competitive with the contract, and that has bit the Browns really hard. I think even if you did all the things you did, I think if they had just taken no for an answer, you know, they'd obviously be better off for it. But Jimmy got competitive, and then that was a failing. But he also seemingly did it because these guys said to him, this is the guy we want. This is the guy who's going to be able to get us to where we want to go. And he did what he did. But that's not meddling. That is not
doing his
dictating.
job. Yeah.
That is that is him supporting his guys.
Yeah. Which honestly, Pete, in researching it, I know that it's true and that they wanted him and everything. It does surprise me some that Stefanski was so on board for this because he's not a Stefanski style quarterback.
I don't know what that is. Like that and I'm not trying to I know what you mean. Because you sit there and you go, Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, Jacoby Brissett.
Plays off schedule, and the guys that Stefanski is more of strikes me as like a Kirk Cousins type guy.
But nevertheless, Stefanski went and met with him and sold him and showed him how he would fit in the offense and all this other stuff. So I understand why people talk about this. I don't. So if we were to discuss this coming NFL draft, would you immediately write off, Jalen Milroe and some of these other guys who are more athletic, the guys who can move and make plays off script and do some other things? Or would you and just say, hey, man, Quinn Ewers and Shedeur Sanders, guys who are more pocket driven, those type of things. Are those the only guys you look at, or do you look at the whole package? Because I would still look at the overall package as opposed to just saying, no, he's got to stay in this lane, because I don't think that makes sense. I think ultimately they were of the belief that they could get Deshaun to do the things they wanted these other guys to do and have this other thing, which is the mobility and making the plays off schedule that Baker Mayfield did not do with regularity. That Jacoby Brissett did not do with regularity. That Kirk Cousins is basically physically incapable of doing.
He's not able to, yeah.
So I do think that Kevin Stefanski went, "Woo, I'd have all this extra stuff to work with."
Yeah. So maybe you're right. Yeah, and I guess you can't take this one off because it's been such a failure, and kind of put that in, everybody like him physically in a box, right? I don't think that's fair.
The other guy I would mention that Case Keenum was a guy who ran around. Like Case Keenum, when Kevin Stefanski was the quarterbacks coach of the Minnesota Vikings, Case Keenum wasn't afraid to move around. Now he still operated heavily from the pocket, but he would do a lot of off schedule stuff and that type of thing. So it's not unprecedented for Stefanski by any stretch, but obviously the results here are bad. And the other part is I know I'm in the minority on this, which is fine. I love DTR. I'm not suggesting he's a starter. I'm not none of these things where I'm not go. Just DTR is destined for greatness. I just really like his talent and his ability to operate from the pocket and do stuff on time, and then do some extra stuff with the legs and make some plays off that. Like I think that is, if you could get a super polished, obviously a little bit thicker version of DTR, I think that's ultimately what the Browns would love to be able to do. They drafted DTR obviously before they changed to this offense and some of these other things. I think this is just sort of the direction that they liked to go ultimately. And again, they obviously had success with Joe Flacco, and the same thing, who at this stage of his life, not a great athlete. Coming out of college, phenomenal athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. That makes sense. And to the point of DTR, at some point, and I just wrote about this, but at some point, Winston or not, there's a point of no return that this season they may reach. And at that point, I think to optimize your chances, it makes the most sense, if it's safe to play him without damaging him. You probably play DTR and try to get him some valuable reps and draft a quarterback. So at least you have two chances at maybe getting a young quarterback on a rookie deal instead of one.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately you're in a weird spot if you have to carry Deshaun Watson on the roster, and if you get to the point where you're like, just please stop showing up here, then you would have to get another vet. I think at that point they're sort of stuck with it. But yes, at that point, Deshaun is the veteran, DTR plus most likely rookie of some sort, but could be another veteran if they don't like the quarterback class or they feel like this isn't the year, which I could understand. But then it's another veteran, and then you're sort of looking, can I get a Sam Darnold who's did not play well this past week, but in general, having a nice little resurgence. Well. And I get, again, not playing great, but can I get a Justin Fields type where it facilitates me enough where I can win football games? Can I find that cheaper veteran that can sort of give me that look? Can I find a Baker Mayfield type? Can I find a Geno Smith type? The guys who are journeyman guys who can process fast, who can get going, that you won't have to pay a fortune for, and you can sort of bring new life into them. Obviously, that is what happened with Jacoby Brissett to a point. Joe Flacco obviously happened. So, Kevin Stefanski has shown the ability to do this. Then it becomes, who is that guy and what does that look like? And that's where it gets interesting. But yes, I would love to be able to get, in a perfect world, they could void the contract. I don't think that's going to happen, which is really tough. But yes, veteran, DTR plus one more, either rookie or another vet.
All right, here we go.
this in fact was like somebody texted me yesterday, not these guys. Someone texted me yesterday and said, what percentage of Browns fans do you think would push the button and just right now trade Deshaun for Baker? And here was my reply. See, it's so much worse than that. 100% of Browns fans would say, "Give me Baker."
No, not 100.
Man,
but
then,
over
you know
90.
what? Then
over
those
90.
those whatever
Jason
2
Wood
or
would-
3%.
Yeah.
Okay, you're helpless. I can't do anything
Yeah.
for you. Whatever percentage that is, you just say, "Give me Baker today and take Deshaun." I said that's not the issue. Give me Baker and give me 3 first-round draft.
No, I hate this argument so much. It's so stupid. Okay, listen, here's the thing with Baker, right? That people don't realize. Like, the person he is now and the person he was when he was in Cleveland are like, he's gone through so much. He left here. He failed in Carolina. He failed in LA. He had to grow up. Even his wife has spoke about this, right? At length about that he had to go through that stuff to grow up. And then he got a chance with Tampa Bay and he's doing great. And that's amazing. And I'm happy for him. But like to say that this would have ended up where he is now in Cleveland is I think is a little bit of a stretch.
It is a stretch. I will push back on a few things.
Okay.
Carolina had Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield.
Yes.
They're both playing really well now. So I think in a lot of
Right.
ways, Carolina failed them. And then he did have success with the Rams. I mean, famously, he learned the offense
One
in 2
game.
days. I mean, still, I think that one game sort of like revitalized.
They
the
elected not to
possibility.
keep him ultimately.
Now, to your point, one, people were done with Baker Mayfield. I was not, but a lot of people were done with Baker Mayfield. And, Jason Lloyd and a few other media members could not wait to tweet about Baker Mayfield when he threw the final interception when they got lost in the playoffs. It goes, there's Baker. Like, there's this element. Now, can we say for certain that Baker Mayfield wouldn't have grown up with another year in Cleveland? I don't know the answer to that. We certainly can't say he would have. Like, both of those things are unknowable. More than likely, he plays out the 5th-year option and then they move on to something else. And we're still looking for a new quarterback. But to that point, yes, you still have the 3 first-round picks, fine, or 2 at that point, I suppose, since you would have used one of them. But yes, you would have had the 3 first-round picks, undeniable. But to then mischaracterize this, or let's say play within the margins here and suggest, well, Baker Mayfield's good now, and we'd have 3 first-round picks.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to believe that for reasons that we've mentioned, reasons that the chat is mentioning, in terms of his wife has said it helped him become a different person, that he said it's helped him become a different person. I would only say that I would have been very curious had they kept him. And obviously a big part of that is ownership freaking shot their mouth off. Whoever it was talked about the adult in the room content, and you went and got Deshaun Watson. So you earned that. But if they had not done that, and they had brought Baker back, and even if they had talked about trading for him, they just left that out. They talked about trading for him and said, well, we're not trading him. You're not going anywhere. We're going to figure this out. And they really figured this out. I don't know what would have happened. It's very easy to say that it wouldn't have happened. The only thing I would cite is a lot of people thought David Njoku was never going to grow up either, and would have tossed him aside any number of times. And now, obviously the Browns are very happy they didn't. I still think, again, that ultimately, even if you got the 5th-year option with the healthy shoulder, it's possible that it maybe would have broken through and figured it out. But I think largely they would have been getting through it and looking for the next guy at that point. And it would have been different, but ultimately still some ways the same. It's just the difference is you went the route you did, which was Deshaun for $230 million, the 7 draft picks, all this other stuff, which is just abominably bad, regardless of anything else. I think making this comparison is only fair to say that you would still have the 3 first-round picks.
Picks over the last 3 years. 2 third-round draft picks and a 4th-round draft pick.
Yeah.
Because that's what we don't have on our team today that we should.
Yeah.
Who made that decision? You tell me.
To go for Deshaun?
Yep. Let's get rid of Baker. Let's go for Deshaun.
Now, listen, you take Kevin Stefanski's word for it. He said that everybody was on board in the organization. We're going to get Deshaun Watson.
Of course he's going to say that. He's a good company guy.
Listen,
he also stood in front of the mic yesterday and said, I'm going to keep playing Deshaun. And it's my decision.
At some point,
he's a good company man.
At some point, you're going to take, you keep saying it's my decision and it's on me, they're going to fire you.
And you damage yourself down the road for potential other jobs.
No, he doesn't.
Well, at some point, he's got to stand up for himself.
If he gets fired, the entire league is going to know, oh, well, he was in Cleveland.
Yeah, well, they already
It doesn't
know.
count.
No,
It doesn't count.
they already know.
But in the terms of whose decision was it, all the information I have up until this point was AB was the first on board with pursuing him. And
so it was his initial idea. It wasn't the owner
I
saying.
don't know that necessarily Barry wanted to go to the lengths that they wound up going in terms of contract and guaranteed money and all that. I can't say with certainty. I don't
he
know.
had to get permission from the owner to do that. That was an unprecedented contract.
Yes. I'm saying that's an owner call to 230 guarantees.
Because after Deshaun said no, I'm not going to play in Cleveland, and the next day the deal was done. To me, that's Jimmy. Jimmy went and said, "Make it happen."
Listen, Jimmy gets what Jimmy wants. They're gonna build,
and so do we.
They're gonna build a dome in Brook Park.
Sure they are.
Because that's what Jimmy wants. It doesn't matter who says no. It doesn't matter what county officials or city officials or whoever pushes back. And if he pays for it himself, go ahead, do whatever you want. I don't care.
He is going to get what he wants.
But Jimmy gets what Jimmy wants.
And you know what? We have to live with it.
And Jimmy wanted Deshaun. So Jimmy's going to get it. Now, again, it was made, everything I've been told was AB was on board first. Now, is there a line where you say, all right, you know what, we've reached a point, this probably isn't a good idea in terms of money, and he already told, I don't know the details.
When you say first, does that mean that Stefanski had to be talked into it?
No, I just mean AB was the first to say, we need to look into this.
Let's do this.
So let's be clear, though. If you got Baker Mayfield, and I'm going to look at it from Haslam's point of view. Hey, y'all think Baker good enough for this extension? Coaching staff is like, I don't know. Because we're not going to act like the coaching staff was in the front office was in love with Baker Mayfield and his performance.
They clearly were not.
Now, Jimmy
Haslam did not love Baker either.
Oh, okay. Nope. Well, if you go and you say your honest opinion and your expert opinion is, you know what, we need to move on for Baker.
Yeah.
Right? So you go to the owner, tell them, you say, cool, what's our alternative? They said there's a guy out there named Deshaun Watson. How much is it going to cost? And you got some allegations with him. All right, well, let's go look at it. If I'm Jimmy Haslam and we pulled the way to move, then you go to me and you say, okay, well, to make the roster around us complete because we gave up a lot of assets, we're going to have to keep front loading these contracts to keep kind of giving them these bonuses so we can do which he's done. Then you get 5 games into the season. Jimmy Haslam sitting here and he's like, this ain't it. This ain't it. This looks terrible. I'm embarrassed. People keep bringing my, because that's the one thing he don't want. He does not want his name brought up for any on-the-field garbage. He wants to get a stadium.
Oh, it is, though.
It is.
Yesterday and today, all signs are pointing to this is Jimmy Haslam.
So what he's saying.
What'd you say?
G. Bush is crushing it so far right here.
Yes.
Lucid, he's absolutely right so far. I don't know where he's going, but this is great so far.
And to Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry is, listen, I trusted you when you said Baker was done and don't give him no deal. Now look what he's doing. I don't like that. That looks like it's on me. Now you say go get Deshaun Watson. We went and got Deshaun Watson. You said it will change the offense. You changed the offense, and it still don't look good. They said, listen, we might want to bench him. He's like 5 games in, and I'm paying. I already paid out this money.
He's going to keep paying too.
No, man. Listen, you're going to lease. I'm going to get my money's worth out of this Lamborghini.
But you know what? You can die trying to show.
And this is the problem because ultimately Jimmy Haslam doesn't benefit. Jimmy, it just reflects on Jimmy because what is the conversation right now? Everybody's saying it's Jimmy Haslam. Like, so if that is if your whole thing is I want to avoid being in the crosshairs, I want to avoid embarrassment. He's literally doing the opposite by dictating. As everybody's alleging. This is the opposite of what he would want. It would now incentivize him to say, get him out. I want to win. It would help him. Yes, it would help him. It would help him.
It would help him.
It would help him. Yes, this is the thing. Like, this is where nobody takes the any of this to its logical conclusion. Nobody takes it to the logical conclusion, which is Kevin Stefanski can get himself fired. They even just said it. He would look like a champ. It would not carry with him. So he gets to be the head coach, act like the head coach, get fired for it, and get away from this and not carry the blame with it. I mean, to some extent he has to, but like other fan bases will go, that guy won that many games in Cleveland. I saw what that guy did in 2023 with that team, and he had to work under this. I would love to have this guy as my head coach. And he gets another big contract out of it eventually. Takes a year off, whatever. He will be back in coaching and right back at winning. And Jimmy Haslam will be sitting there with nothing but still Deshaun Watson here, and then have to find new coaches, new GMs, all this other crap, spend more money. And this is the thing, like this is where like Jason Lloyd is so close. He's so close, and the G. Bush tried to help him out. Doesn't want to look bad. Doesn't want to hurt himself for the stadium. This is hurt. This will hurt him for the stadium if he's dictating to Deshaun stay on the field, because he's only going to piss off the people he would be asking to pay for taxes. He's saying, well, screw them, screw the county officials. Well, listen, at some point, they're just going to be like, we're not doing this. My constituents are telling me not to support this. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my job. I'm not losing my job for this. I want to have a career. So it's going to blow up in his face if they're doing what they're suggesting. I hate the fact, as we've talked about, I hate the fact that they're stuck with Deshaun Watson. I really don't like the fact that, at least right this second, Kevin Stefanski saying Deshaun Watson's the guy, but I have to take him at his word. And ultimately, I hope they figure something out very quickly, because this is really painful to keep enduring. And this conversation is no fun after a while of, consistently talking about what the head coach, the GM, the owner, all these people are doing, as opposed to figuring out how to win football games.
Totally agree. It's not much fun, but I think you made a lot of sense about, we kind of hashed this whole thing out with the to the nth degree about the ownership role in this. To your point, it would probably help him in general if Stefanski would sit him at this point. His approval rating would come up, and especially after week 7, because right now you're headed towards a week 7 home game, which could get epically ugly if this thing keeps rolling the way it is and you keep running him out there. So, I wish they would sit him down, Pete, but I do agree it's on Stefanski at this point. It's his decision, and that's kind of where we're at. I don't know why he's doing it, but he is doing it. And it's not making – here's the thing that we have to account for, and you made this point, and this kind of even leans into it more. Like, this is making Jimmy look bad right now by continuing to play him.
Yes, that's the thing. Like, again, if the goal is for Jimmy Haslam to help himself, again, the $230 million has been gone since the contract was signed. It's gone. It's not like he can look at it and go, here's my $230 million. It's slowly leaving me. It's gone. It's been gone. All his main focus is now is, how do I get past this one way or the other, and how do I get the stadium built? And none of what people are alleging is going to help him with either of these things. So that's why it's unreasonable to believe he's doing it just for the sake of doing it, and saying, I'm willing to set potentially not just tens of millions, but potentially hundreds of millions of dollars on fire to protect this guy.
Yeah. And it actually would probably behoove him to meddle and force him out at this point. If his ultimate goal is the stadium.
Yes. I mean, that to me, if he was going to meddle, it would be to get Watson out of the lineup, even if it's just to try to rehab him, as sort of the PFT argument is, to say it's not working right now. We got to sit him down and fix it. But like he's going to have to at some point. The headlines are going to come when Deshaun Watson is benched, and it's going to suck. But it's going to suck regardless of when it happens. So reduce the embarrassment now, sooner than later, and try to put a better product on the field, because at least that will help you. Even if people are still going to go, well, you wasted all this on. That's a sunk cost. We already know that. Like, welcome to it. I see the tweets and all the jokes and all the stuff, and the Browns deserve all of it. But how do you fix it? You put a better product on the field, period.
Yeah. And at this point, that means sitting him down. So, all right. Good stuff, Pete. Great articles on the Haslam coverage and, making some sense of all of this for everyone. We have everything covered for you at the OBR.com, 24/7 wall-to-wall coverage all the way up into the Philly game on Sunday and beyond. This was a much-needed show to hash all this stuff out. Thank you guys all for participating. Appreciate all of you guys' opinions. Whether you agree or not, we do appreciate your opinions in the chat and your viewership. So hit like and subscribe on your way in or out. And hit that notification bell so you know every time we go live. I'll be back tomorrow night with all eyes on Cleveland and hopefully Casey Kinnaman in the alive and visually able to appear, hopefully. So any parting words, Pete, before we get out of here on the React tonight?
Sign up for the newsletter. It's free. It's easy. You'll get all our stuff sent to you without even thinking about it. Just a reminder of the stuff that we're producing, lots of content. But yeah, do the things, hit like, subscribe, all that stuff. That's certainly helpful. Tell a friend. And even if you don't agree with me, that's fine. Or any of us, that's fine. We're happy to have that conversation, but we're not afraid to tell you either what we know, like behind the scenes, or what we think based on the information we have.
Absolutely. Great stuff, Pete. Good job as always. Follow Pete on Twitter @_Pete Smith_. It's a must follow. A lot of the statistics that I have been looking at as far as the defense, the separation, all that stuff, I have retweeted at Ward on Sports as well if you want to check that stuff out. You guys have a fantastic evening. I'll see you tomorrow night. Throw us on in the background while you're watching the Guardians fight for their lives on All Eyes on Cleveland, if you get a chance. And the newsletter link and the OBR link are in the chat below. So just pop down there, throw your email in, and you'll get it right to your inbox. So for everybody over at the OBR covering this for you day and night, for Pete Smith, my name is Brad Ward. Hope you enjoyed. See you next time. We are out.